Hi, my name's Tom Mason. I'm a professional wildlife and nature photographer and Nikon Europe Optics ambassador. And in this video, we're talking about getting out in the local area and scouting locations for wildlife photography close to home. Now, a lot of people believe that when it comes to wildlife photography, you've got to go to far-flung destinations, but this is far from the case. One of the most important aspects of wildlife photography is spending time with your subject, and that's why working close to home and right on your doorstep is one of the best places to be. So when it comes to wildlife photography, the garden is a brilliant place to get started. Our outdoor spaces offer a fantastic array of wildlife with multiple subjects, allowing us to develop our photography and focus on our shooting over an extended period of time. Now, when it comes to finding wildlife in the garden, just sitting and having a coffee is a great way to do it. Sitting still for an hour or two is just perfect for really letting the wildlife come to you and seeing all the different subjects that visit on a regular occasion. Sat here for the last hour, I've seen so many different species of birds. We've had starlings in, blue tits, grey tits, a selection of house sparrows as well, multiple different birds that could be great future photographic projects. In the borders, there's been loads of different butterflies and insects, multiple bumblebees flying around. A great opportunity for macro photography as well, if you're not someone who has a longer lens. All of these things are great to do to start with, because by sitting here, viewing through your binoculars, getting an idea of what's around in the habitat gets you started on thinking about where you could go for your photographs and different locations and habitats that could work for those different and interesting images. Now, one thing that of course most people can work with is garden birds. They're a fantastic subject to get started with because they're quite easy to do, but they can offer a great portfolio of images throughout the seasons. Right now we've got a mixture of young birds milling around after fledging, as well as adults that do look a bit rough. But as the seasons progress and it goes into autumn and winter, if you put up feeders, you can bring a whole variety of different subjects right into the garden, making for some great images without going anywhere at all. Something that's brilliant to do. Now, for some subjects, you're unlikely to find them in the garden, so getting out a little further is an absolute given. But it doesn't mean that you have to head off to really distant locations. Walking distance from home is usually some of the best places you'll find, locations that you can come back to time and times again and really make some great images. Now, when I head out scouting, I usually carry just two things with me. A good pair of binoculars. I've got my 8x42s here, my Nikon Monarch HGs. These are brilliant for a variety of habitats. They give me a wonderful field of view, excellent magnification, and great low light performance that's ideal when you're scouting out different subjects. And then in my hand, my D850 along with a 500mm PF. This is a great lightweight system that's good for when I'm hiking a longer distance, taking it a long way and really putting in the miles for your feet. Just means that I can get an impression of the habitats through a long lens and give me some ideas of what sort of images I might get from a location. So when it comes to local wildlife photography, a great location to get out and scout is that of your local churchyard. Fantastic locations for wildlife, often only a short walk from home. They really do offer a variety of species that you're probably unlikely to get in your garden. Everything from green woodpeckers and jays through to foxes and badgers. There really is a boatload of wildlife to get out and shoot here. If you come down and see it for an hour or so, scouting out through your binoculars, you'll be amazed how much wildlife locates in these places, be it in rural or urban environments. Once you've found a few spots, be sure to look around and check for other signs of wildlife. Tracks through the foliage or holes in hedge lines, they really do show where animals are moving through, meaning that you'll be more aware of locations to set up for your own photography. When you do know some spots, it's a good idea to bring along your camera and work out exactly the positions that you want to be in. Work out those images for those more environmental shots, as well as close-up portraits, and the locations and the exact spots you want to sit, so that when you come back, you can move in quickly, sit down and get set up with minimal distractions and minimal disturbance, meaning you'll be more likely to get the creatures coming out ready for those perfect images. Another place that's great to shoot is that of a local woodland. Throughout the season, they offer a variety of photographic opportunities, all the way through birds through to fungi in the autumn. They really do keep producing opportunities for the photographer. Now, they can be quite difficult places to photograph. A mixture of the dense foliage and vegetation makes it hard to track down subjects, especially without them hearing you and spooking before you ever get close. Add to that the fact that the dense canopy overhead restricts the amount of light coming in, can make it even harder to view and also photograph your subjects when you finally catch up with them. Some things you really need to think about before heading out. Now this is where my 8x42 Monarchs really come into their own. The large 42mm object lenses are just fantastic for letting a huge amount of light in to give me real good clarity when I'm searching for subjects up ahead of me. The 8x magnification is also great because it's slightly less, meaning I'm not too close in and can view a large area to quickly identify subjects ahead of me to get in my positions for photography. So as a professional wildlife photographer, one thing I'm often asked about is how I go about finding my actual subjects in the field, locating those individuals to photograph. Now it's not really about finding individuals, but more about understanding the whole environment, because then you can spot the anomalies within it. If you understand the movements of the trees, the standard birds that you see, the sounds that surround you, it's very simple then to pick out those new sounds, those different sounds when you're out in the field. You'll see that flash of a sparrowhawk flying by or a fox running through the woodland. It can be quite apparent very immediately if you understand what it usually looks like around you. When the whole environment goes quiet, you suddenly know there's a bird of prey. And those sort of things are ideal for helping you get into position, get hunkered down on the ground, ready, because if you hear all that, you know that something might show up. That means you should be ready to make that image. So a final little tip for getting out and scouting a woodland is to spend some time on the woodland edge. These are great places to find wildlife as they move between environments, moving in from fields or pasture lands into the woodland in order to find shelter before moving back out again in the evening to feed later on in the day. These are great locations to scout out for photography because they also provide increased amount of light. The dense woodland can be quite hard to photograph in all but the brightest conditions or when you've got a good patch of light coming through. But the woodland edge means that you've got a lot more light to work with, meaning you can push for those later evenings when our subjects are more active, meaning you're more likely to find a great place to get out and shoot some local wildlife. Now, growing up on a farm, I'm no stranger to dragging myself through fields, climbing through hedgerows, looking for wildlife and photographic opportunities. So many great species live here, from the brown hare to deer. It's a great place to get out and shoot. Field margins like these and lovely hedgerows offer an excellent number of opportunities to the photographer, and you can certainly scout them out in your local area. Using a map, check for local byways and footpaths that will find this sort of habitat, but be sure to double check and make sure that you're not straying onto any private land when you head out into the field. Now, when it comes to photographing on open fields and along the hedgerows, there's a couple of things you're going to want to think about. Now, firstly is to get yourself as low as possible to reduce your outline. Makes it more likely that subjects are going to come closer. Secondly, you're going to want to position yourself up in the corner of a field. It's a better place to find wildlife as they move through, and they tend to feed in the corners rather than right out in the middle, and often use those areas to change locations and change fields, meaning you're going to have more pass through of wildlife in the corner rather than out in the middle or along the edge. Now, where I am right now is a great position for photography. I'm in the corner looking down the edge and also over the field in front of me. This is a fantastic place for finding stuff like brown hares that are one of my all-time favourite subjects to work out in the field. Of course, with the vegetation being quite high at the moment, it's difficult to spot them out there, but I know that they like to use the margins and the edge to run around and move feeding locations, so this would be an ideal place to set up for a photograph. Laying down here and looking down the edge, I might get them as they run towards me and swap over fields. Great opportunity to make some interesting portraits or more distant environmental shots from this location. Certainly something to try for yourself if you've got this sort of habitat around where you live. So then, when it comes to finding wildlife close to home, there's a whole heap of opportunities. From churchyards to woodland to field margins to the garden, there's all sorts of different places to explore and look for wildlife right on the doorstep. As a photographer, I'm out all the time looking for wildlife close to home. It's a great place to photograph, to make different images that are almost impossible in different locations. One of the first things I take out is always that of my binoculars to scout locations, look for my subjects and find them ahead of time so I can get myself into the right position for those final images. For anyone who's out there looking to explore and find wildlife in their local area, get your boots on the ground, go out there and spend a lot of time looking for that normal. When you understand what's there every single day, you'll soon pick out that rarer wildlife, that great stuff that makes for those awesome photographic opportunities. My name is Tom Mason, wildlife photographer and Nikon Europe Optics Ambassador.